Heyo everybody, Haku here with a review of Kubera chapters 12 to 20, The Sorrow of Loss, Sorrow of Lost, Sorrow of the Lost, Sorry to be Lost, I think one chapter said in the official translation. I don't know if there's any difference in any of the Korean titles, but The Sorrow of Loss. I'm reviewing this all here, and I guess laying some groundwork since this is the first review in a while. Kind of the reason that I'm doing these reviews, there's two big reasons. First of all, while other series I read, I feel like I can read them, I can discuss them, and I can get everything going on. Kubera's got so much going on that I feel like just in my reaction, without going back through them, without taking notes on them, I'm going to miss a lot. I feel like I'm not going to get a lot. I feel like I'm going to miss a lot of subtle things if I don't pay more attention to Kubera. So these reviews are not only to give all of you a little bit more content in addition to the reactions, they're also to help me remember and understand everything that's going on in Kubera. And the other reason is that Kubera has blog posts afterwards, whatever you want to call them, for each chapter. And for me as a Tower of God fan, I might be in the minority, but I think this extra context, this extra information is really important to read, fun to read at the very least. And I wanted to, in some way, cover that stuff. So that's what I can use these reviews for. The way it's going to be set up is I'm going to go through and discuss chapter 12, then I'll discuss the blog post or afterword or whatever you want to call it for that chapter. Then I'll do 13 and the one for that chapter, and I'll do it like that. And I should say also, before I really get started, that currently I just finished reading The Night It Rained Fire. I think for these reviews it'll be important to tell you where I am in the story. And also for the future of these reviews, I think I should stay a couple arcs behind, because I noticed when going through, taking notes and everything, there are things that I wouldn't have noticed or maybe wouldn't have had as big a reaction to if I wasn't already a little bit ahead when it comes to my reactions and everything. So because of that, I think that these reviews should stay a bit behind the reactions, just so I have some extra information that I can use to, actually get excited for some of the stuff where I can be like, oh, this was foreshadowing this, or this was hinting at this. I think that stuff like that is important. And also, I thought about it. I inadvertently, accidentally took a week off last week because I was only going to do a couple chapters. In the future, for some of the long ones like The Night It Rained Fire, I might have to break it into multiple parts. But I wanted to do all of The Sorrow of Loss in one video. So, that ended up taking longer. And also, now that I have the new setup, what I'm going to be doing as I review this, I'm going to be putting the chapter number and panels up on screen so you can always know what chapter I'm talking about. And, I'll just use some panels for context. I'm not going to show too many because I think you're only supposed to show 20 panels per chapter per video, or maybe just 20 per video in general. So I'm not going to show too many panels, but I will have at least something up on screen for you to look at other than just me talking, to give extra context, or if I need to refer to anything for you, I can have that up on screen. So there will be some sort of panel up on screen while I'm talking about each chapter. But I guess that's about it as far as laying the groundwork. That's about it as far as the intro goes. Like I said, I have so many notes. I have 3 full pages of notes, and these are bullet point notes. I don't write out full scripts or anything. When I take notes, I just take bullet points. And I still managed to fill 3 entire full pages of this stuff. So let's just go ahead and start getting into chapter 12. And to start off this sort of recap and discussion of chapter 12, our first scene has Marina bringing Gandharva to Atera and warning him, maybe don't attack Atera, maybe don't attack the place, maybe it's not a good idea because they've got a closed space, they've got turrets, they have a literal god here, there's an actual god here. But Gandharva says, that can't stop me because I can't read. He says that he's not going to turn back because he's never going to fear a god. And then from there, they just happen to run into some half-hunters who are going to Misty Shore. They're using a Yaksha's bone, which we'll get some more information on that in the afterward stuff, but they bring up stuff like half-rights have not been passed, and because there are no half-rights, that means it's legal to sell or kill halves. Also, the Magician's Council decides the laws like that, I guess. That's it. Seems kind of weird. I guess the Magician's Council decides stuff like that. And then we know that again, as somebody who's read a little bit in the future, we know that the feelings and the attitudes and the treatment of halves is very different in different cities. So I wonder if each individual city has maybe their own laws and rules in regards to things like that. But either way, they think Marina and Gantarva must be halves. It's like there's no way they're actual like important Shura or anything. They just got to be halves. And again, there's some more context given on that in the afterwards, which is why I think it's really important to have that information here too. Marina cancels them. The guy pulls out they look retard and then just gets canceled by Marina. So Gantarva wants to ask them questions. Gantarva wants to get information out of them that they can use for what they're trying to do here. And we get an idea later on in this arc of the actual goal here, but even though we are given an idea of it, they are really still keeping a lot of what's going on a mystery for the most part of the arc. And just in general, they're very vague about how they speak about their actual goal here. But Marina does not care about the information. Marina just wants to take them out, which is fair enough. And they somehow, even though I consider this situation to be pretty serious, it's a pretty serious situation, they still manage to make it comedic. They manage to make it fun. So much of that happens later on as well with the Gantarva and Agni stuff, where we get some really serious character stuff, but Kurigam still manages to make it just fun and chibi. And I like that a lot about Kubera. I like that it has fun with itself, even with its serious moments, even with things that are deeply important to the characters. It still just kind of lets loose a bit and just has fun with it. I personally like that. But yeah, they make it all comedic. And we end this chapter out with Gantarva deciding to disguise himself as a human and sneak into Atera to infiltrate the place. Marina's not really for it. Marina doesn't really, like the idea of all of this. He's kind of been naysaying this whole thing where Gantarva's like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'll just infiltrate the place. And he mentions right at the end that he lost everything to sneaky bastards. Again, hinting at things in the future might mean a lot more, but I honestly thinking about it, I think there's a good chance that even I at this point don't have a full grasp on what he mean. What did he mean by that? I think even now I might not have a full grasp on it, but even of the things that I do know, I'm just kind of like, this could be referring to multiple things, to be honest. But after that, we get into the blog post, or the afterword. I always call it blog post with Tower of God, so I'm going to have a habit of calling it blog post, but just know I mean the afterward stuff that Kurigam does for each chapter. There is like an actual blog where there's like character information and place information, magic information, but from my understanding, that's something that's almost like a wiki that's written by Kurigam herself. So it's almost like, from my understanding, it's something where Kurigam updates it as the story goes along, just updates the character profiles. So I don't think that's really something I can look at without being spoiled. I don't think that's something I can cover. So hopefully all the important information I need is just in the afterward stuff. But Chapter 12's afterward gives us a little bit about halves and quarters. We get the explanation that halves are, and this is something that we get into deeper in future arcs, but halves are at least 50% Shura blood, if not over 50%, and they age at 1/4 the rate of a human, and can't use magic, but some of them can use transcendental skills. Quarters are people with anywhere from 25 to 49% Shura blood, and I was going to say, it's kind of weird. People making part Shura people at this stage when there aren't supposed to be a lot of Nastica or Rakshasa or whatever around are kind of like doing stuff with some freaky creatures, aren't they? Now that I think about it, I mean, hey, no judgment. If you're in a fantasy world, why not? But now that now that I'm thinking about it. So most of them have to probably, it hasn't been that long since the cataclysm or whatever. Again, there are different terms for it. I'm gonna just say cataclysm. It hasn't been that long since then, so I guess most of the halves and quarters are probably descended from Rakshasa and Gnostica. You would think. You would think at the very least. Probably almost all of them. But yeah, quarters are 25 to 49% Shura, and they age at 1/2 the rate of a normal human. They can use magic, which according to Kurigam here, makes them stronger. And I get to a point, I'm like, okay, yeah, you have the extra ability that being a quarter gives to you, plus you can still use magic, but it just feels like transcendental abilities that, you know, Shuras and even gods use seem stronger. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong about that. Maybe I am just straight up wrong. But then again, magic is just kind of borrowing the abilities of a god. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe maybe what Kurigam's saying here does make sense, because when I first read it, I'm like, really, the quarters would be stronger. You would, to me, seeing the halves we've seen so far, I would have thought that halves would be stronger, but and maybe that's just an overgeneralization, but you know, either way, they say that Shuras who take humanoid forms look like halves, and since nobody thinks that they're any like powerful or ancient enough Shura still around in the human world that can transform to take human form, if anybody, like these half hunters here, if they come across somebody that looks like that, they're going to assume that they're halves. They're not really going to think that they're actual full-blown Shuras, just because people don't really think that they're in the human world like that anymore. One way to test to see if somebody is a Shura or not is to try to feed them vegetables, but even that just isn't foolproof. It's not a surefire way, because some Shuras actually can eat vegetables. We get some information on the Yaksha's bone. The Yaksha's bone weakens nearby halves, and most magicians find that to be kind of useless, because they consider halves to be people. Most magicians do. But then I'm like, you know, even if you consider halves to be people, you know, people can still be bad people. Like, what if they're like some criminal mage or something? It still seems like something like that might be kind of helpful in certain situations. But this is something really cool. All the way back at chapter 12, Kurigam says that Agwan Rajov is a quarter and has bought and destroyed many of them, which has raised the rarity of them. And that's really cool, because that is an Agwan reference this early on, which is something that, again, if I wasn't ahead, I wouldn't have really had much reaction to. But that's really, really cool that Agwan was referenced this far back. Again, that's probably like so weak compared to, this is like 500 some chapters long. Some of the callbacks are probably going to get insane. Again, we are only like at chapter 12, and I'm only a few arcs further. I'm less than 100 chapters in. So once we get further in, there's probably going to be much crazier even callbacks. But I just thought that that was a really neat thing. We also get confirmation that Yaksha's dead, because Kurigam says that parts cut off from a Shura will disappear if the Shura's still alive. So like if you wanted to cut off a Shura's arm and use it, the arm would disappear if the Shura was still alive. So that means Yaksha has to be dead. Unless, again, I'm interpreting something wrong here. Also says that Gandharva has wings, but they're only decorative and can't be used for flight. And I think that maybe they're talking like when he's in his like human transformed form, because I'm pretty sure we've seen Marna fly when in full Shura form. So I'm assuming she just means when in the humanoid transformed form. In chapter 13, we actually start off with a little bit of a hint at stuff before getting our title spread thing and then getting into the chapter proper. And the actual little hint we get is we start off with Roosh. I love Roosh. I love Roosh and Lorraine so much. They're so great. They're two of my favorite characters. So we start off with them investigating Lisa's village, where the Red Sky incident had taken place. And they use something that's supposed to tell you how many people died there, so that they can compare that to the population of the village, or what the population was supposed to be, and use math to figure out if there were any survivors. And so then they can know if there are any survivors they need to help or anything. But yeah, it says 0 people died there, and that's the hint we're left with, is that nobody apparently died at Lisa's village. Which again, with the dream that Lise has at the very beginning, there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on. And we start off the actual chapter with the sister. So back when Lise and Asha were first entering the city, there was this guy who was like, "Oh, my sister's such a big fan of Asha. If only she was here." We start off with that sister, and her reaction to Gandharva is so funny. This entire scene is really great, where Gandharva's just trying to sneak in, pretending to be a human, using a fake ID and everything, and trying to hit the speech checks, roll for seduction on the gate guard lady. It's really, really fun again. And he uses, I mentioned the fake ID, uses the license that the half hunters had borrowed to try to get into the city. And so then we go back to some of the Lorraine and Rouge stuff. And according to them, there were no survivors before for any of the Red Sky incidents. So whatever's happening, we know Marina's involved, or Marina should be, unless... Yeah, because Marina was there at Lisa's village. There's some really sketchy stuff going on. It's like, are they or were they teleported, maybe even teleported to the Shura realm or something instead of being killed? But it is very weird that, again, this is one of the big mysteries, that apparently no one died. Or maybe right before they got destroyed by Marina's attack, they were whisked away by some god or something, because we know the gods are supposedly extremely nutty powerful. Not just in a combat sense, but in a what they can do or what they control sense. So I don't know. That's one of the biggest mysteries, but apparently nobody had died there before, and all we have after that is Agni collecting flowers for Brilith and being confronted by Gandharva. With that as our endpoint, we get into some more blog post information, or afterward information, for Chapter 13, and we learn that Shura detectors exist. They detect Shura parts, regardless of whether they're full Shura, or whether they're halves. Also, Shuras have certain parts that are untransformable, which is why Gandharva had to take out his eye. For him, it is his eye. So for all of them, and we see this moving forward and everything, for every Shura that transforms into a humanoid form, there is at least some part that they can't transform. For Gandharva, it's his eye, even though the rest of him is kind of bluish, but I guess that's his real form. When he transforms, he just looks like he does now, like a regular human. For Marina, didn't they say before that it was his skin? So it's like basically his whole body, like he is as transformed as he can get, and he still looks very, very half-like, even in his most humanoid state. But from there we learned that Manusha is the word used for humans on Wilrarv, and also that Wilrarv has more advanced technology than the real world in some ways. Like, in some ways it's still kind of fantasy, kind of behind us, but in some ways their technology is more advanced than us. Also, there is one thing in the blog post that was kind of unclear. Kurigam talks a bit about Lorraine and how some things had changed or some things had stayed the same from the, the contest, the best something version, whatever that version, that some things had changed, some things had stayed the same, and said something like, well, she still has her fiance, so I guess that means Lorraine in the main story has a fiance, she's engaged. Again, not 100% sure, was a little bit unclear on the wording for that one, but I did think it was, worth just taking note of. Chapter 14 starts with a flashback to the 8th month of Year N8, and we get more relationship establishing stuff, flashbacks for Agni and Brilith. So we have more stuff establishing their relationship. Agni just tries to play it off when confronted by Gandharva. We get a bunch of explanations. We get explanations of Gnostica, who are the first Shura, the original Shura. We have Agni, who does want to fight Gandharva. fair and square, just a straight up fight, but not here and not now. We've got a flashback to Agni stopping the gods from using a hostage against Gandharva. So Gandharva kind of owes him in a certain sense, and there's this idea of Gandharva here paying back kindness with evil. He, lies about killing the person that Agni is looking for or searching for, and Agni's hurt by this, and losing his control, losing his composure for a minute is something that hurts Brilith. Giving into his anger for just a moment hurts Brilith. And we end on a cliffhanger of Asha sensing something, and that's really all there is for chapter 14. Some of the information that we're given in the blog for this one is that Agni hates rain, but he doesn't really do anything about it, because if he did, then it would kind of destroy the water cycle. So in order to, save the water cycle, the water table, he just puts up with rain. Brilith was 14 in this flashback and is studying cosmology, which is similar to the real life Earth astronomy, and it's an important field, an important subject in the study of magic. The planets shown in Brilith's chart here are not in the same solar system as Willarv, and also Kurigam says that Willarv has one moon, but she's not going to draw it. So Willarv does apparently have a moon out here somewhere. There's an explanation here that the Gnostica, the original Shura, are closer to gods than they are to other Shura, and because of that, they're often classified as evil gods. Also, the big difference that I take between, and there's probably way more differences, but the big difference mentioned here between the way that Gnostica, the original Shura, work and the way that gods work are that when gods are killed, they can resurrect after a certain amount of time. They can resurrect themselves, but Shuras can't. If even a Gnostica dies, they can't resurrect. And that's the big difference. And lastly, they say that Agni has been ostracized by the other gods for not fighting unfairly. So I suppose fighting unfairly is just normal run-of-the-mill procedure for the way that gods work in Kubera. The early parts of chapter 15 are a lot of explanatory kind of things. There's a lot of narration given to us as a reader. We get told that the power that a god can use is proportional to the summoner. They're using the summoner's life, really. Also, that Gandharva's plan here is to upset him enough that he overloads the summoner, which will unsummon him. That's the general idea of this entire infiltration, because instead of trying to break through the barrier, deal with the turrets, deal with, Agni in an actual fight, the thing he's trying to do is just rile him up enough to make him unsummon himself by hurting the person who summoned him. And while we're going through this flashback of them kind of explaining the plan and going through all of that, he gets a little upset at Marna with the way that Marna talks. Marna talks as if he's insinuating that Shakuntala is already dead, and Gandharva gets a bit upset at that. We get told that there's 8 clans of Shura, and again, I'm glad that I went back through, that I decided to do these reviews and everything, because I thought there were a lot more than that. I thought there were like 13 to 16 or something. I thought there were like a bunch of clans of Shura. 8 is a lot more manageable to wrap my head around. So there are 8 clans of Shura, actually. And Gandharva is the friend of Marana's father, who, again, you would have to also, obviously, Garuda seems like he's his father, the original of the Garuda clan and everything. So, of course, they're Gnostikas, they're going to be friends, and that he is also Marana's childhood teacher. Gandharva is so strong and so powerful that he can completely change the weather and the landscape, but he has less than half of that power now. Getting into what's going on in the city, there's a magical fire burning the city. It's magic fire. It's not even, interacting with things like real firewood, not being put out in a way that real fire would. So Asha breaks into Lisa's room where she's still asleep. She's just sleeping through all of this. And I love that we get that scene with the completely undressed Lisa and everything, but then Asha leaves without waking her up, just carrying her, which means that Asha just dressed her. And This is actually, I think, one of my favorite scenes from this. There's just something kind of sweet and kind of solemn about not just Asha letting her sleep, but the way she talks about it. The way that Asha thinks about what's going on and her just carrying Lise out of the building and everything. There's just something really nice about this scene that stuck with me a bit. But either way, that's, again, really all there is to talk about in chapter 15. From the blog post there, we are told that the Magicians Guild building doesn't actually have physically correct space. Like the way, I guess, what is it, like non-Euclidean geometry or whatever? Like, pocket space stuff is maybe more accurate, where like doors can be right up against each other as if the rooms are small, but you go into the rooms and they're big. The way that space works within the Magicians Guild doesn't like physically make sense. It's not physically correct. Also, Atera doesn't hold exams there. The buildings, they say the buildings built before the Cataclysm were built with transcendental attacks in mind. Because again, before the Cataclysm, there would have just been a lot more Shura, probably more interaction with gods as well. So because of all of that, the older buildings were built with this kind of thing in mind. And most buildings are made by a company called Brimo, which is one of the 10 Creation Company brands, and that's something that will be explained later, says Kurigam. So at least there are 10 brands, and they're going to be explained later. So at least I know it'll be explained. At least I like having that. I like at least the author saying it'll be explained later, and not just leaving it as is. But also, they bring up, and this is something that's very important moving into the future, that each spell has a daily use limit. And Asha's already used all of her Hoti Vayu, so she can't teleport anymore at this point. Chapter 16 starts us off with the closed space and Brilith already being down. The closed space and Brilith herself are down, and we have her lamenting a bit as she's bleeding there. The other priests who are around come to check on her, and she's thinking, I had an argument, I said some rough things to Agni, but I figured he'd be back, acting like the usual idiot Smith. Things would just go back to normal. Things would be normal, even without apologizing and everything. She just thought that, our life would go back to the way things were, even though I messed up. We see in the city there's people selling fire suits, people rushing to the temple. Lise finally wakes up, and I love Asha being a jerk. All of the moments of Asha and Lise together are really endearing, and Asha just being a hater constantly in any way possible is really always really funny to me. She is just constant, because she goes so far with it so often. It is just so comedic to me. Agni is in a state where he can't even teleport at this point because of the condition that Brilith is in. His insight also doesn't work on Gandharva as a Gnostica, and Asha now, because of all this, needs to go and reactivate the closed space because there's a lack of priestess candidates around, because Atera hasn't really needed priestess candidates when Brilith has been doing everything herself for so long. In the blog for this one, we learn that, after a fire in the world of Kubera, magicians can just kind of fix everything. Fires aren't as big a problem because they can just magic everything all better when it's done with. They also say, what priest candidates are. Priest candidates support the priest. They give them breaks so that the priest can take a break from holding up the closed space every once in a while and let the candidates take over for a bit. But there just aren't really ones that are around because of Brilith. And technically, Agni is the one that maintains the closed space. Brilith just summoned him. He maintains it. And she takes breaks every once in a while just to not seem too suspicious. We learn a bit more about insight. It's an ability that can be used by gods that are... I mentioned it in the most recent read-through where I was like, okay, we know 5th Zen gods are a thing, so they're like 1st, 2nd, 4th, like 3rd, 4th Zen, and it says that gods that are 4th Zen or above can use insight, and that it can't be used on Gnostica. And I think there was something said about the reason it can't be used on Gnostica. It might be because of age, but I don't know. Can it not be used on Gnostica because they're like the original Shuras? And again, we don't really know how gods or Shuras came into being to begin with necessarily. So, yeah, it makes me wonder if age at least plays a part in it, then does insight not work on other gods? Does it not work on the primeval gods? That's another question that again will probably come into play a bit later on. And it can also be used to detect the non-transformable parts. We see when he looks at, I think it's just a panel above or below this. It's around the panel I have on screen, actually. I was wrong, I was stupid, it was way later. But we can see that when he looks at Gandharva using insight, he can see the eye glowing. So it can be used to detect the non-transformable parts of Ashura. So again, other than feeding them vegetables, one way to tell is to use insight, but I guess that's kind of useless information for most people, given that only gods can use insight and that humans, even very in-the-know humans, don't know that insight is even a thing. We then move into chapter 17, where we start with a flashback again of Agni and Brilith, and Agni thinks that he stays not because Brilith has a long time to live. She's like, oh, you're a god, but you're staying around, and I summon you. That must mean I have plenty of life left in me. And he thinks that he stays not because she has a long time to live, but because he's an idiot. I think it's really that though he cares about her so much that he can't let her go. He cares about her so much that he can't go away, even though he knows that, even though she's trying to hide it, summoning him hurts her. But again, he doesn't want to just abandon her or leave her either. And I think he says, it's because I'm an idiot, because so much of it is him, though he's a god that's lived for near countless amount of time in comparison. Just these past 10 years or whatever has been something that's so special to him. And again, we don't know how, with Brilith's mother, with everything else, we don't know how deeper that goes with the person that, he was getting mocked by Gandharva, saying, oh, I killed that person you were searching for. We don't know how much deeper a lot of this stuff runs for Agni. And we have both Agni and Gandharva here putting on a bit of an act in front of each other when it comes to this confrontation. Agni starts flexing some massive power. A fog starts forming from him trying to raise the temperature with his abilities, while Gandharva is lowering it with his abilities. We learn that, gods can resurrect, of course, but if Agni dies here, Gandharva's like, oh, I won't go after this priestess you care about, I'll just kill you, because if I kill you I won't have to worry about you for a while, given that even if you can resurrect, it'll take you decades to resurrect and I can just do what I need to do by then. But in the end, when it comes to attacking him, Gandharva can't bring himself to do it, because Shakuntala said that, they owe him one. Shakuntala said, don't fight with Agni, don't hurt him. And in the end, Gandharva can't bring himself to go against Shakuntala's wishes. He can't bring himself to do it. And from there, we actually cut away to see, a wider shot of what's going on. And Marna's just kind of hanging out. Marna's sitting here thinking, I can't really see what's going on in there because of the fog. I have no idea what's going on in the city. And also, he's thinking, I don't know what to do. Because if I don't go in and help, is Gandharva going to be like, wow, you idiot, couldn't you read the room? Don't you know that was your cue to come in? And he's like, but if I do go in, is he going to be like, did you really think I was so weak I needed your help? Why would you rush in and ruin everything? So he's like, which one will Gandharva be more pissed about? So finally he decides, oh well, it's better to do something than to do nothing, even if that's not the right choice. So he transforms and we get cliffhung on Marna going into full Shura form. And so in the blog, in the afterword for this one, Kurigam is like, it's a romance, I swear. I swear Kubera is a romance. Kurigam describes Kubera as a romance that looks more like an action. says that Brilith hides her identity when going outside because of all the fans she has accumulated, and she used to go out a lot more when she was younger, when she wasn't as famous. And even now, when she goes out somewhere, she has to go to, like, when she does take a break, again, she has to take one every once in a while to not be too suspicious. When she does take one, she has to go out to somewhere very secluded in order to, you know, avoid fans. Also, it is mentioned that Shura's bodies aren't fixed to a single form, in reference to Gentharva turning his arm into like a sword weapon last chapter. That Shura's bodies, they aren't fixed into a single form, and again, from things we've seen in the future, with them, again, making themselves look like humans, with them going full human form, with them being in their kind of like just hanging out, like again, we know that Gentharva has his current form we see him in. Does he have more of a monstrous, like, full Shura form? That's probably, possibly a thing. Maybe not. Maybe this is just how he looks. But does he have, like, a fish monster version? Maybe. We know that he can turn himself into a human-looking person. So there's that. There's the fact that we know that they can change sexes. So we can see that they can transform their bodies to a certain degree, probably more so for the more powerful or more ancient ones, for the Gnostikas, the higher grade ones, but maybe less so for the lower grade ones that are just always going to be more bestial and maybe can't transform as much. But yeah. And then also that Shakuntala isn't in the prologue, so Shakuntala doesn't count as a main character. Kurigam went out of her way to say, yeah, you're not in the prologue, you don't count as a main character. In Chapter 18, we start with Lee's waking up after the massive explosion from Agni, you know, losing his cool. Losing his cool. Didn't really intend that pun, but it's there. From him flexing his power and everything, the explosion from that, she wakes up, and she's actually at the temple, but Asha won't tell her who saved them. But then we get a scene of some random guards being like, yeah, I saw this girl with green hair and pigtails carrying this other person, and she jumped over the temple walls into the temple. So apparently Lise is just blacked out and gone with this power, and I think that did happen earlier when her village was attacked and she blacked out and like went to the bottom of that hill. So this is at least the second time that I remember that this has happened with Lise so far. And then the rest of the chapter are these really good Agni and Gentharva moments that are funny, but they're also really deep to the characters and important to the characters, and they're almost all told through these little fun chibi comedic panels, and it's really well done, because again, I love how much we're able to get out of these characters, get out of this story, while also having it just be fun, chibi, not taking itself too seriously. That was really, really a fun way to present things. One of the big things they bring up is when Gentharva's like, you know, humans pray to gods, but, you know, who does a Gnostica pray to? Like, I have so much shit going wrong, who do I pray to? And Agni thinks, I think the same thing. I'm literally a god. Who do I pray to? But I'm not going to say that out loud, because, you know, I feel like, haven't we all been in those moments where somebody's complaining about something going wrong in their life, and you're like, and you're thinking, been there, or you're thinking about like, that's it, I've been through so much worse, or I know people who've been through so much worse, but you're not going to say that out loud. You're just going to be like, oh man, that's rough. That's rough, buddy. But on the inside, you're thinking like, yeah, you know, relatable. So it's funny that Agni's like, yeah, I agree. I'm literally a god. Do you think I haven't thought about that? But he's like, but he's going through a lot, so I'm not going to say that out loud to his face. Then in the end, Gentharva freezes Agni. He's like, I would love for the world to have been different, for us to have been allies, to fight side by side, but it wasn't meant to be. And he freezes him, which then allows, it doesn't allow, it disallows him from chasing after Marana, who's going towards the center of the city, towards where the temple is, where Brilith is. So in the afterword, Kurigam says, even if Agni didn't have to worry about his summoner, Gentharva's still much stronger, and just like I think it again might be a wording thing, because they're like, oh yeah, even we it was in reference to the one panel where it's like, oh, if I would have just used all my firepower or whatever, then I could have chased him away, and we have the little chibi Gintarva running away, and they're like, oh yeah, even if you didn't have to worry about a summoner, Gintarva's still much stronger. I don't think that means much stronger than Agni, because that seems a little weird. I mean, hey, maybe it does. Maybe Gnostica are just that strong. I don't think it means stronger than Agni. I think it means stronger than Agni's perception of him just running away if he used his powers. I think it's just stronger than that perception of him. But hey, maybe it is stronger overall. Maybe it is like just literally as translated. But also Kurigam says that Agni could have actually won when Gintarva first approached. If he didn't fight fair, if he just blitzed him right there at the very beginning when he first showed up, Agni could have won. Also, Kurigam says that Gintarva froze Agni at absolute zero, but absolute zero is only scientifically possible, mathematically possible. It isn't something that actually happens in real life physically, and that's why for all the times when they were showing the temperature around the two of them, how it like was cooling and warming when he was frozen, Kurigam didn't put the temperature for that because it wasn't 100% fully scientific, even though this is a even Kurigam says, even though this is a fantasy and everything, it wasn't really totally scientific, so I didn't throw in the temperature there. And lastly, we learn that the gods can use insight to see wicked people, and also during this chapter, Agni says that he's the third most popular of the gods, like in terms of which one is worshipped the most and all of that, that he's the third most popular. So in the blog post, Kurigam says that the first most popular is Vishnu, who disappeared during the Cataclysm and whose jurisdiction went to Asvins, and that's something that we had been told before. And the second most popular with humans is Indra, who hasn't answered any summons since the Cataclysm because they're busy with paperwork. Or at least when Marina... when Brilith asked Agni about Indra, Agni was like, oh, he's too busy with paperwork. Chapter 19 begins with some of Brilith's thoughts, where she thought that she wanted to be a priestess, or became a priestess to be like her mom, but she realizes that she would have been a priestess anyway, or she would have wanted to stay. She would have wanted to do this anyway. She's currently in a state of neither sleep nor being awake, and Lorraine isn't there to help. Lorraine's not there to come in and assist. So Asha comes into the temple and says, you know, Asha's going to activate the closed space, even though Asha isn't a triple attribute. From there, we have the fire around the city vanishing without even being put out. And actually, right above this panel that I have up here, we have Kaz and his brother. We've got Kaz and Haas, like little bit of a reference there. We get to see them again, and they discuss seeing Marna, and they're like, you know, there are Garuda Shura who are the size of a house. They're pretty large, but there aren't Garuda Shura the size of a mountain. So maybe they're just talking from not knowing that many because they're younger or anything, or maybe people just haven't seen like some of the really, really powerful Garuda Shura, or maybe what they're saying is totally true, and Marna is not just large, but like very large, like massive for a Garuda Shura. His full Shura form is maybe just that huge. So from there, Marna starts to make the red sky, and Marna says that he intends to kill the human with the name of a god, which again gives us, if we're just putting two and two together, gives us their goal here. The goal, seemingly from this, was for Gintarva to infiltrate and to use the sort of manipulation of Agni to get him to take out his summoner, which would unsummon him, which would take down the barrier, and that would give Marna and give them access to find the human with the god's name. But Marna says, I can't find you, I can't capture you, I'm just going to destroy the whole city and you along with it since I can't figure out which one you are. So they don't need the human with the god's name alive. The human with the god's name can be killed, and that's something that's going to be terribly, given that that's literally the mainest of our main characters, that's going to be something that's extremely, extremely, extremely important for the entire series moving forward. So from there, it's so... Okay, this is actually really funny. The priests are like... So Asha's like, okay, I need to put up the close space. And the priests are like, why? It's not like we're being attacked by a Shura or anything. Asha's like, it's literally a red sky. Yes, we're being attacked by a Shura. And they're like, what? The priests weren't worried about this because apparently Agni just does it from time to time as a prank, and that is hilarious and terrible. But the closed space stone is actually overheated. It's not cooled off from not being used. It was actually overheated. Lise then offers, hey, let me do it. I'm a triple attribute. But Asha locks her out, but not before telling her to keep everything about herself a secret. She cannot let anybody know about what's going on, which again tells us that Asha knows a lot more, and we don't know how or why Asha knows yet. And then we end this penultimate chapter with the attack from from Marina, raining down. Hopefully I didn't mess up the names any before then, but you know what I mean. So in the blog for this one, we have Kurigam saying how often a character appears and how important they aren't really related. And yeah, that happens a lot in a lot of stories. How important they are and how often they appear isn't necessarily the same thing. Also, Kurigam says that the curly hair of the three priests, the one that I thought when we had the original flashback and we saw them when they were young, she was pretty cute, says that one is a quarter, actually. And then this is where we have Kurigam mentioning updating stuff for the character and magic, etc. profiles, and I'm just like, because that's something that's constantly updated, I guess that's something that I just can't read. Also said that Kurigam gave Marina's Shura form arms because it looked cooler with arms, even though it was extra to draw. And the skill Marn is using is Transcendental Skill Crimson Blitz, which can only be used when in full Shura form. We then get into chapter 20, where we start with the explanation that closed spaces all have an attribute, and somebody with a triple attribute that matches that is the best choice. Somebody with a triple that doesn't match that is the next best choice. And if somebody doesn't have a triple attribute and they use the closed space, they might die. So Agni then thaws himself out, and he's idiot-y Smith, but he's not an idiot. He can tell that the reason Guntarva was going after him was just to get at something else in the city, not actually to get at the priestess, not actually to get at him, not even to get at the city, but to get at something at the city. So he wants to make a deal not to harm Brilith, and and that he just won't accept any more summons to the human realm. He'll go away. And from there, we have this flashback, warning him not to trust gods, warning Guntarva not to trust gods, not to make deals with gods. And given that we can tell that the one is Sagara, is this the other character we saw before? Or maybe this is actually, since Sagara is from Ananta, maybe this is Ananta themselves? But again, not 100% sure. But one thing that he thinks is that he never told Brilith about insight. So again, that's what I got at earlier in the review, where I was like, even humans that know a ton about gods don't even really know about insight. He never told Brilith about insight because Brilith was always so careful around him with her words and actions, and she was always also formal with him already, and treating him as a greater, higher existence, not talking to him, just having a relationship as an equal already, that he was like, if I tell her that I can read her thoughts, she's going to be trying to change her thoughts or hide her thoughts even, and that's unfair. So he didn't even tell her about insight. So in the end, he's gone. She wakes up, and she sort of laments that the relationship really never got to be a full thing because he never got mad at her, no matter how she treated him. Like, while he's saying, she treated me too nicely, she like was always trying to soften things for my sake because she viewed me as a god and herself as a human. She's thinking, I always did so much and he never got mad at me. It would be more honest if he had just gotten mad at me or pushed back every once in a while. And from there we get to the very end, which is funny in the sense that Lise has this moment where she's like, Asha, and she like walks in. Asha's maybe dead, the priest is calling out for her, so she just absolutely goes into her Asha's dead performance, and then Asha's like, I'm fine, you idiot, and she's like, oh, this is so embarrassing. I put on the whole Asha's dead performance. I really went all out for this Asha, this dramatic, main character death moment. I went all out for it, and you weren't even dead. So it was a really fun ending there. And that's it for this arc. The only thing that's left is the chapter 20 blog post where Kurigama is like, okay, so from episode 1 of Kubera all the way until the end of episode 20, only one day has passed. So these first 20 chapters all happened in one day. Also says that the closed space is typically invisible to normal people. A magician using magic can sense it with the magic, or a Shura or god should be able to sense it, but a normal person can't even tell typically. Also, the closed space uses the vigor of the person maintaining it, so it's usually not that big a deal for just a regular person. They can kind of sit and again, you have to have the right attributes and training and all that, but for a normal person who is, accredited to work the closed space, they can just kind of do it, and it doesn't really drain that much vigor. Again, they have to take breaks here and there, but it's usually not that demanding. But in an actual fight where it's taking attacks and stuff, it's going to drain a lot more to defend against those attacks. So we know how much that has to hurt Asha, given that she just tanked Marina's entire, Red Sky Transcendental attack with this closed space. So she just tanked all of that herself. Also says that most gods not only don't even care about a single human like what Agni is doing, most gods don't even really care if a whole planet is destroyed. Like, if a planet is destroyed, Willarv isn't the only occupied planet in the world of Kubera. There are just other planets with people on them, so it doesn't matter that much to most gods, actually. Also, Kurigama mentions that she took out some of the scenes from this chapter with Marina and Gandharva because of time constraints. She was like, you know what? I have to make this chapter. I need to figure out which scenes are cuttable in order to make it in time to get published, and decided to just cut out some scenes with Gandharva and Marina that didn't quite make it in. Also, she straight up says Asha won't die because she's a main character, which makes me think, is she just straight up saying, yeah, the story's going to go on, Asha's not going to die because she's a main character? Or is this one of those things where 700 chapters in, Asha dies, and it's like, well, we do a little trolling. And then at the very end, there's a little bit of talk about the next arc, AAA Magician, which again, I'll review the entire arc together again. Originally, Kurigama says that the next arc was just a one-episode side story, but she decided to expand it in order to explain the magic system of Kubera earlier on in the story, because it's something that there was always a bunch of questions about. So this was originally just a short one-chapter side story, but it was something that was decided to be expanded. And with that, we're done with reviewing this entire arc. I recorded a ton here, so I'm not exactly sure how long this will all end up, but I had a lot of fun with it. I am really excited to be able to get this out for all of you. Once this is out next week, I plan to react to the entirety of, I think it's The Power of the Name is next. I will react to all of that in one video. Then I'll be doing reviews, finishing out season 1. I'll kind of try to balance the two of them, doing reviews and reacting to the rest of season 1. I'll probably do character countdown or tier list to finish out things before I start season 2. Maybe if I think there's some stuff I want to do discussions on, or if there's some stuff that I think I want to do theories on, then maybe I can do something like that. Again, we'll have to see where things go. I'll figure things out as I go along and all that. But I guess that's it. So thank you for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there too. Tell me what you thought of this review, what you thought of these chapters, what you thought of my thoughts on them and all that. Sorry if it wasn't the best, you know, I'm just trying things out, just trying my best here. Comment, let me know, again, if you have any suggestions or ways to improve. Again, once I edit this and watch through it myself, I'll probably definitely see some areas that need improvement for sure. But, again, I say a lot. That's one right there. But if you want to, then subscribe. It'd be very much appreciated. It'd be really amazing if we could hit 10K. You know what? Let's get to 5 figures. I would love to get to 10K subs by the end of the year. Let's set unrealistic goals for ourselves. Let's go to 10K. So subscribe if you would, please. It'd be appreciated. If you want to talk on Discord, it's free and open for anyone. Ask and I can give you a link. If you want to talk on Twitter, just follow me there. If you want to help support the channel, you can drop a super thanks. If you want to not just support the channel, but also get a shout out at the end of every video, get One Piece videos a little bit early, you can hit join down below to become a channel member. You can go to patreon.com/Haku of the Tubes. Their link will be in the description. I don't know if I'll maybe do more things there. On the one hand, I want to do special things for patrons and members, but on the other hand, I don't want to be greedy and paywall things for people, you know what I mean? But either way, huge, massive thank you. It is very appreciated. Patrons and members do help me to keep making videos more than anything. So thank you so much to patrons and members. Chosen Regular Evan Holly, Magical Girls, FR Nono and Abyss Knight, Charrington Students, David Langstaff and Folded Ghoul, Slayer Candidates, SG and Stan Cedar, and Pure Element Patio Diallo. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.